Greetings from the set of Metro and More at Metropolitan Community College, serving more than 50,000 students with over 120 programs at our 8 locations in the daytime, evening, weekends, or online. And I'm Kent Pavelka. Welcome again to Metro and More. More of what you need to know about Metropolitan Community College. Excited for the hour ahead, a discussion about the Emmett Till Legacy Foundation. Our guest for the next 60 minutes is Deborah Watts. Deborah is the co-founder of the foundation and a family member of Emmett Till. Ms. Watts, a recent presenter at a Metropolitan Community College panel discussion and a showing of the documentary called Who Killed Emmett Till. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
You are a Minneapolis resident now, but you're an Omaha native.
Yes.
How long have you been gone?
I've been gone for several years. Gosh, it was probably 1988 when I left.
Yeah. So did you grow up in Omaha, or?
I'm born and raised
in
Omaha, Nebraska. Yep, this is home ground.
Yeah. You get back often, or?
I do. There's some wonderful celebrations that take place every other year called the Native Omahan Days. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Sure.
But it gives me an opportunity to come back, engage with high school friends or folks from high school, others. It's just a wonderful time, and I enjoy it. But I get back every now and then, too, to see family. And
still have family here.
And friends, yes.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to North High.
I'm
a North High Viking,
yeah.
Yes. And then also attended the University of Nebraska at Lincoln.
Yeah, so did I. Did you know that North High won the state high school football championship?
I just heard that.
Yeah,
and
it was great.
I am excited about that. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think we tried for several years back when I went, which we won't mention how long ago that was. But
no, well, I kind of broached that, but I'm not trying to date anybody here.
No problem.
So what precipitated your leaving Omaha, and did you go from Omaha to Minneapolis?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I was working for a major corporation here in Omaha, and I was transferred there to start up a small business organization, or a business organization that was focused on small business, I should say.
US
so it was
West?
a new division. Does that sound like you're absolutely right? U.S. West. U.S. West.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good.
And so that's what took me there, but still held ties with many of the folks that worked for that company, both here and across the country.
Are you still in that industry? Or
I am not.
You're not.
I am not. I left in '97.
I see.
And started my own business.
Yeah. What is that?
Marketing and management consulting.
Very good.
Started that in 1997.
Well, and you are a relative of Emmett Till. We're going to tell the story of Emmett Till.
Yes.
But before we do that, how are you related to him?
Our great-grandfathers are brothers. Joe Smith is my great-grandfather, who actually lived here in Nebraska as well. I was raised with him. When he migrated from Mississippi, I was in the same household with Joe Smith. And Emmett's great-grandfather is George Smith. So Joe and George, brothers.
And that would make you
a
distant cousin, would it? Or
in the culture of African Americans, we don't tend to differentiate between how far back we are, how far removed.
So he's a cousin.
We're cousins. Exactly.
I got you. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So let's talk about. I mean, one of the things that you state empirically is that most people in his generation know about the Emmett Till story, but the fact of the matter is there are a lot of younger people that don't.
That's true.
Because we're talking about an incident that happened in Mississippi in 1955.
That's right.
Just talk a little bit about what happened, and then we're going to show a little bit of a video, YouTube video that is part of the documentary.
Yes.
And that'll give people a better idea, and then we'll go from there. But tell us the story of Emmett Till.
Well, Emmett, at age 14, traveled to Money, Mississippi to visit some relatives. And while there, along with other cousins, he visited a store, Bryant grocery store, which we'll see in YouTube. And there he actually whistled at the store owner. And a couple days later, he discovered that that was something he should not have done. And he was awakened at night by the store owner and his brother-in-law, kidnapped and taken out and beaten, and was found later in the Tallahatchie River. So at age 14, he met his death, which I think it's a pivotal part of our history that started the civil rights movement because of the death, the murder, the acquittal of the murderers because they were found not guilty. They later confessed to Look magazine, sold their story for $4,000. And because of double jeopardy, they weren't ever charged again. But one significant thing that Emmett's mother did, which I think is something that actually sparked the civil rights movement, she had an open casket funeral. She decided to let the world see what happened to her son. And that picture, horrific picture of Emmett, was shown in magazines, started in Jet magazine, which is out of Chicago. Actually opened the door for media to actually be a part of telling stories like that and others. But showing that picture with Jet magazine's support, it was something that many people across the world, it enraged them, and it caused, I think, others like Rosa Parks, and I shouldn't say I think, because Rosa even points to Emmett's story as one that gave her the courage to do what she did, which we all know the story of Rosa Parks, which started the bus boycott, which really amplified, I think, things that were going on and started those wheels turning and that movement towards civil rights.
So Emmett Till murdered in, the name of the town was?
Money, Mississippi.
Money, Mississippi.
August 28th, 1955.
Let's go to the video, the YouTube video, which is a kind of a teaser and part of the documentary that was shown during the presentation that Deborah did. Let's do that, and then we can talk about this in more detail.
Okay.
Okay, very good.
The M in Mississippi stands for murder.
Well, the whole trial was just a farce.
All we want is justice. We get justice, then we can close it.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round.
Hello, I'm Ray Matoyer, and welcome to Money, Mississippi, in this state's North Delta region where cotton was king. Money's a tiny town of about 500 people, but it has a huge place in American civil rights history. This is the area that Emmett Till visited in 1955, and his horrible murder here helped to set in place a chain of events that changed America forever. But so many questions still linger about that murder, like who was really involved in his killing and why.
So you're in the Mississippi Delta, rich land like it is right off the Nile Valley in Egypt. It's very rich land.
Mississippi State Senator David Jordan is our tour guide on the drive to Money from nearby Greenwood, past the endless rows of cotton fields. Soon you're there at the place where it all started.
This is what left of the old store. In those days, Bryant and his wife lived upstairs.
The old store is just a shell these days after years of neglect and storm damage. But in 1955, it looked like this, a thriving business that depended on the trade of black farm workers, or field hands as they were called, who picked cotton. Emmett Till was born and raised in Chicago, but like millions of African Americans, he had deep Southern roots. His family migrated from Mississippi to flee the segregation of the South. But he had never visited his relatives there until the summer of 1955.
Emmett, I'm sorry, but we've already made plans. And besides, I'm not too sure about you going down there.
This scene from the play The Face of Emmett Till shows the concern his mother Mamie had about him visiting Mississippi.
So, kudos to Ray Matoyer, by the way, Omahan himself, and
Yes.
has done well in this industry. Did he produce that, or was he the talent, or?
He produced it,
Yeah.
directed it, visited many of the locations there, and interviewed a lot of individuals to put that together. He did an excellent job. He also did the music that you'll hear on that we've heard in the film.
Well, as we talked about, part of your presentation was showing the documentary.
Yes.
45 minutes about long?
Yes,
is it?
about 45 minutes.
Folks that were not able to come to see the presentation, how can they see the documentary?
Well, we have been given the privilege to share it to audiences across the country, across the world actually. And so if we are fortunate enough to be invited, by, as we were with Metropolitan Community College and other colleges and universities across the country, we're ready to do that and ready to show the documentary. So it can be hosted by colleges, universities, along with I've shown it in private homes, where families have wanted to share it with their children, grandchildren. We've also shown it at faith-based community, in churches and many different places. So if we're invited in to do it, as we were with Metropolitan Community College, we are happy to show it.
Very good. Well, that would suggest maybe we can show your contact information, because that's the best way to begin that process.
Oh,
and
definitely.
We'll do that now and before the show is over too.
Okay.
You can get a hold of Deborah and arrange for that.
Yes,
But you can't get on.
okay.
You can go online and see it on that what we saw on YouTube, about
Yes.
7 minutes worth of it. Right?
First 7
Yeah.
minutes, yes. Ray Matoyer actually have an opportunity to engage with Ray through YouTube, because if there's questions or comments or challenges, and he receives many, there's an opportunity to give your comments there too.
Well, let's go back, Deborah, and talk about Emmett's life. He was born in Chicago. Is
In
that
Chicago,
right?
yes.
And so he was, he was 14 in 1955, so let's see, I'm trying to do the math here.
41. He was-
1940.
He was born in 41.
41. And did he have siblings?
He didn't. He was the only child
He
of
was.
Emmett Till Mobley, yes.
And,
Only child.
and so did he go to Mississippi was it with an uncle?
He went with
Or-
extended family, Mose Wright, which actually Mose Wright was married to Emmett's grandmother's sister. So I guess that would be a great aunt.
I thought we didn't try to distinguish. I thought she did.
Well, I knew that much. I didn't want to go that deep, but
Yeah.
I did know that much, so
Yeah.
I thought
Well,
I'd share.
so what precipitated that? So he spent his first 14 years in Chicago.
Yes, yes.
Why did he leave?
Well, Mose Wright had been visiting in Chicago, and there were a couple other cousins that Emmett was close with. They were going to be traveling back, to visit with other extended family there. And Emmett had never been to Mississippi. So that was a wonderful opportunity for him to travel there, visit, spend the summer, visit his cousins, kind of, take off the Chicago, image, if you will, and be there and, farming towns amongst the cotton and, sort of experience I guess the beauty of the South. First time, actually going there, and of course
I see. I was under the impression that he had made the decision to go there to live, but it was more of a summer vacation kind of
just
thing?
a summer vacation,
Wow.
visiting family, that many of us have done,
Yeah.
to visit, and
I
that was.
don't know
that was
why I had
beginning
the
of it.
impression that he had decided to leave and to live in Mississippi.
No,
that
no.
wasn't the plan.
No, he was just making a quick visit. Now, of course, his mother and grandmother did not want him to go. Emmett was a pretty gregarious, had personality, an outgoing personality. And for, that time in 1955, that didn't fare very well in the South.
No.
And so I don't know how much training or warnings you could receive to transfer that sort of a, feeling good about yourself to going to Mississippi and being relegated to that culture. It's hard for anyone to do. And it was certainly hard for a 14-year-old to do.
Yeah.
And that's
Especially if he wasn't prepared for the reality of the culture. didn't understand it.
Exactly, exactly. And who would, you know? So, and that's the same thing with my family, you know, coming from Nebraska. And I was warned as well, you know, later in years when I visited the South, you know, to not speak up, not challenge, you know, just accept things the way they were. And, you know, many of my relatives, you know, said the same thing to me, you know, Deborah, that you just,
Yeah,
you won't fit.
Well, I mean, it's,
unfortunately.
again, this is a generational issue, this conversation for,
Yeah.
for people younger than me.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not dating you here, but
That's okay.
But in the interest of having a good conversation, if you don't have some mileage on you, you just don't understand. I remember taking a trip, driving to Florida through in the gosh, it would have been the early '60s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was like another world, you know. And I don't know what years you're talking about that you went down there, but so here's Emmett in Chicago, and really right in the middle of the Great Migration, everybody coming from the South.
Exactly.
And he goes back down there.
Yeah.
How long was he there before all this happened?
You know, I believe close to a week. He'd only been there a week, and you know, again, you know, he's visiting cousins who are accustomed to that culture there, and so they viewed Emmett as being a show off in some instances, or someone that was dressing a little bit differently than they were. They were, you know, working in the fields. They were working in the cotton fields, and so their attire was a little bit different. And Emmett's mother took pride in, you know, spiffing him up and putting a tie on him. You know, and you see pictures of him. He always had a hat on. He was always dressed very well. You know, and it was a working class family, so it's not like he was wealthy or anything
Right.
like that. But traveling to an area like that, visiting a different culture, I think the cousins, you know, thought differently about him too. You know, so he was, I guess, mentored to sort of just tone it down a little bit, you know. But with his outgoing personality, that was very hard for him to do. And so in going into the grocery store, you know, he's engaging. And, you know, there's some, I would say, not necessarily controversy, but there's just some myths about actually what did happen. But that's been clarified and cleared by the witnesses and the cousins that were visiting with him. And so with his personality, he actually whistled at Carolyn Bryant. And that's what, you know, created the issue.
Yeah. Carolyn Bryant, that was the daughter of the store owner, is that right?
Actually, the wife.
The wife of the store owner.
The wife of the store owner.
I mean, here's the bottom line. In those days, it was, I don't know if it was a crime on the books, but it was a crime in the culture down south for
Jim Crow.
Jim Crow.
Jim Crow laws.
For a black man to make any kind of sexual innuendo to a white woman. That's what we're talking about here.
Or, you know, just as simple as looking like I'm looking at you, you know, in your eyes and looking at you. That was, you know, against the culture, and that was part of the Jim Crow laws. So the folks there, my relatives, they understood that well. My great-grandparents that migrated from there, they understood that well. And those were the things that they warned us about. I was a toddler at the time. I wasn't, you know, same age as Emmett, but a toddler at the time. And I heard, you know, the stories, and I heard the warnings, and I knew that they would have to change character, if you will, you know, when they visited the South. And as you mentioned, young people don't understand that today. They, you know, have a sense of freedom that's unlike, you know, having that sort of dual personality, you know, in going from one region, you know, to the next. Just for survival purposes, that was necessary at the time. That's not necessary today. So things have changed, fortunately, where, you know, lynchings don't take place in that same sense. But that same, I would say, the sense of control, manipulation, the creating fear, it still exists today, unfortunately.
Wow. I'm taken back to those years, and again, I guess you need to see the documentary,
Yeah.
because you know, I don't know that anybody with I don't know that very many people understand what it was like back then. So
It'd be hard to imagine. I agree with you. It'd be
Yeah.
hard to imagine.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we understand it, that what happened then and what context and what era that was. That was Jim Crow. That was right before the Civil Rights Movement. We have the Civil Rights Movement. We transition, to post-Civil Rights Movement, if you will. But if you look at that time and you look at some of the messages that were sent, some of those same messages, some of those same restrictions, different in terms of, you don't see folks wearing sheets anymore or hoods, but you do have, there is still that sense in some instances that the certain population can only do so much.
Yeah.
And be relegated to certain things. So the clock, unfortunately, I think, and this is my personal opinion, but the clock is starting to turn back, unfortunately. So if young people don't understand what happened back then, they will not have an opportunity to understand what's happening today. And in order to change that, they need to have an awareness of it. And so we're encouraging those educators to, whether it's colleges, universities like this college and others, to tell this story so that fully folks can have an opportunity to be educated and that students have that full complement of what really happened. Although the story is painful, it's ugly, but it's part of American history. You cannot teach American history without talking about Emmett Till, without talking about the Civil Rights movement and the ugly parts of it.
if you are interested in getting a real good feel for The Great Migration, a book by an author, I think her name is Isabella Wilkerson, or it's called The Warmth of Other Suns, and, and it details, what it was like. What it was like when Emmett went back there to visit, the Jim Crow days. You just made the comment that you think that we're headed back in that direction. Are you referring to Trayvon Martin, or what? What is?
Well, I'm referring to many different things. From voting rights, being the Voting Rights Act being gutted, if you will. And I know I'm using some strong words and terms, and there may be people in the audience that may not agree with me. But I think, some of the things I'm about to say are just things to think about, to reflect on. And that is a Voting Rights Act, some of the voting, the laws that are restricting voting, putting, voter ID, those kinds of, and requirements in place. And I understand that Nebraska was able to defeat that, which I think is wonderful. But if you look back at 1955 in that town of Money, Mississippi, there were about 30,000, it's a small town, but 30,000 people, population there. 19,000 of those individuals were African American. None of them were registered to vote. None. Now, they could register, but there were a lot of different barriers that were put in place. That was 1955. So if we fast forward to today and some of the most recent restrictions, and I call them restrictions, that are being put in place are very similar, to try to minimize.
At least impediments, if not restrictions.
Yes, to put in place. So that, and you mentioned Trayvon Martin, and I think with just the sense that, and I think many folks of I think minority, and in the minority in America, young men are not feeling safe right now, and there are too many incidents of injustice as it relates to murders. Trayvon Martin, for instance, with that, and again, people may not agree with me, but he was unarmed. Someone just walking in a community, maybe not being familiar in that community, wearing a hood, and that young man ended up being dead, laying on a sidewalk. No charges were initially brought against George Zimmerman. Go back to 1955. Emmett Till, 14, visiting in a community, ended up a few days later being, floating in the Tallahatchie River for being there and being a young man who was standing his ground, if you will. So, those and many other incidents. Oscar Grant, there's
Oscar Grant, I'm not familiar.
well, Sean Bell, for instance. There, and I don't want to just speak specifically to his story, but just to say, and this will give, I think, the audience something to look up. Renisha McBride, who was shot in the back of the head just not too terribly long ago in Michigan, for having an accident and then going to a home in a unknown neighborhood, but after leaving the home, trying to seek help,
Right.
she was shot in the back of the head. And there are several other incidents like that. Oscar and Renisha, along with Sean Bell, who was shot 41 times the day before his wedding. So there are profiling. There's profiling that's taking place, and of course Emmett was profiled as well. Trayvon Martin profiled, and I think if we think about humanity, and if we think about what's fair, I think we'll think a little bit deeper about those incidents that happen, and see the link that's occurring. And of course, not each piece of the stories are the same, but there are some threads. There are some similar threads that run through that. And I just don't think that we want to go back, to that time where we fear for our young men in our communities, like we did in '55. But it's starting to happen. I've talked to mothers and families and fathers. I've spoken to Trayvon Martin's parents, and to understand the tears that they cry and the injustice I believe that they faced. I don't think anyone wants to experience that, and so I think it's for all of us to understand what happened then, tell these stories so that it doesn't get repeated. That we don't want to go back to that time again. So.
I want to go back and talk a little bit about something you referenced, and the way I would put it is the expectation of behavior on the part of African Americans in different situations, like in the South. You stipulated that you think that's still kind of the case. It's nuanced, though.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
compared to back then.
And you could probably explain that a lot.
No, but isn't it? Don't you think it is?
Well, I do, and I'm not going to be unfair and say that it's only the South where it's happening. I think it's happening across the country, to be very honest with you. And I think it's nuanced in a way. I love that reference, and I think that we are becoming desensitized to it. People have talked about we're in a post-racial society, and I don't personally believe that that's true. This racism still exists, and it existed in 1955. It existed before 1955, and so if we can take just a closer look at those nuances and understand the results of them, then we can see that that thread is there. And so I'm asking, for our communities, grassroots communities, faith-based communities, students, leaders, folks like yourself, to recognize it, stand up against it if possible. And there are nonviolent ways to do this. And one of the things that I feel just so strongly about is that having this discourse, having this conversation, and conversations, at the dinner table, at breakfast, in your churches, in your schools, is one of the best ways to I think, identify, to challenge each other, and to, I say, bring some reality to what's actually happening. Listening to our young people. How often do we have a chance to engage with them about these things? Talking about the past and the present. I think it's necessary. We're of a different generation, and I think we have some stories to tell. They have stories to tell, and I think we put those things together. We have an opportunity to bridge some of the gaps and to stop some of the things that I think are happening that are damaging to our young people, to our nation, and to our future.
Very, very well put. You talk about, the nuance of racism and lack of communication and fear
Yes.
of one another. It just occurred to me that I think the way you get through that is to have a conversation with someone like we're having right now.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in the grocery store with you, do you dismiss me? Do I dismiss you because of our differences? But how can we dismiss each other if we sit and talk to each other and see each other and don't see color?
Exactly.
Well, and without that conversation, I don't think it can happen.
The beauty of what you just said is that having those conversations is healthy. The part that I think is also the beauty is seeing color, is seeing the differences, and not allowing those things to become the gap or the barriers, because those things are what make us human, and what makes America who it is. And so with that, I think we can reduce that fear by doing that. And if I walked in here with a hoodie on and sat a little bit differently in my chair, you probably think a little bit differently about me. But the same things that I feel, we could still have that and feel and think may represent something a little bit different. But I still have the same probably hopes and dreams that you might have. But you'd never know that if you block me from what I look like. And young people are experiencing that right now. So who cares what I have a grandson, and I do care what he wears, so don't get me wrong. But we do know that there are things that are nuanced and we're categorized by maybe our dress, our attire, our style of communications. But that should not create fear in the hearts and minds of Americans. It shouldn't.
No, it shouldn't. But I think we've got to have conversations with each other. We've got to get beyond those initial. I think we're conditioned to have these initial barriers between one another. Whether it's, and I don't think that's necessarily a racial thing either. We just ignore everybody until we sit down and talk to them, get to know them.
That's true. That's true. So that's a human thing.
Yeah.
So that happens in African American culture. It happens in all
Sure.
cultures. And so if you do remove race out of there, that means the beauty of having that discourse or having that conversation and getting to know people, that's the same thing. That's consistent. But when you add race to it, that just adds another set of elements that I think are proving now to be something I don't think we want America to be.
But don't you think it goes both ways? Although I'm not suggesting that the minority is abusing the majority, but in terms of not interrelating, just automatically not interrelating, because.
Yes,
again,
there. That's not the responsibility of just one group of people.
Right.
It's the responsibility of all of us, and that's why if we have these conversations, we demonstrate them. We demonstrate the beauty of what the outcome is going to be from having that. Now, we may not agree on everything, which is, we're in America, we may not agree, and that's the beauty of it. We may not, or we may disagree on certain things. Again, that's the beauty of it. Now, when we leave, we're still humans, and I'm going to leave with who I am, and you're going to leave with who you are. And hopefully we'll be the better for understanding, each other a little bit better, versus allowing the profiling to take place, the stereotypes to take place. So we remove those barriers when we have these conversations.
Absolutely. I would not have known you if we hadn't had this conversation.
Exactly.
I would have known you on a very different level.
Yes.
You brought some things here. I want to make sure we have a chance.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about the foundation. You've got the Never Again.
Oh, yeah.
What is this? And talk a little bit about now that the foundation is the Emmett Till Legacy Foundation.
Yes.
But
yes.
this is.
Yeah, the Never Again movement is and pledge started when we were at a couple colleges and universities, and we asked young people we asked them what are they willing to stand up for and what are they willing to stand against. And they came up with this pledge, which is, let me reverse this here. I think you can see that.
Yeah.
This pledge on
I'll
the
read
back
it.
here.
I pledge
Okay.
to never again allow the ugly parts of our past history to become the present. I will forever stand up against racism, hatred, injustice, and crimes against our youth. I will always stand up for peace, justice, and equality for all.
Yes, and this came out of the mouths of some college students who were asked that question. What are you willing to stand up for, and what are you willing to stand against? And then we said, well, how do we move this forward? Do you think this is something that you can adopt? Do you think this is something that you can, this is a nonviolent effort, if you will, that everyone across the world can adopt? And they said, you need an image. You need a face to this. And so we asked artists and others across the country through our Facebook page to submit an image to the Never Again movement and pledge. And the young people came up with this image, which I think is black and white. It's pretty simple. But I'll tell you the interesting thing is that the image that most of the adults chose was very graphic. It was a symbol of what happened during the civil rights movement and up to today. And they thought that was a little too strong. So in their minds and their hearts, they thought this would be simple, it would be strong, and would be something that they could adopt.
Very
So
good.
this is the image that they chose. So we're encouraging people. We have a Facebook page. This is their movement, if you will, but we're helping them to promote it. And there is a Never Again movement and pledge Facebook page as well.
Deborah, talk a little bit about the foundation, what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, with the Emmett Till Legacy Foundation, I'll just tell you, we started the foundation in 2005. And we were inspired by something that Mamie Till Mobley said in 1989 at the Civil Rights Memorial dedication.
That's Emmett's mother?
Yeah, Emmett's mother, Mamie Till Mobley. And she was asked to speak along with Rosa Parks and some other folks about the memorial. I'm sorry, the memorial that was taking place. And here's something that she said, and this is our mission for the Emmett Till Legacy Foundation. And she says, at that time, we cannot afford the luxury of self-pity. Our top priority now is to get on with the building process. My personal peace has come through helping boys and girls reach beyond the ordinary and strive for the extraordinary. We must teach our children to weather the hurricanes of life, pick up the pieces and rebuild. We must impress upon our children that even when life rises to 7.1 on life's Richter scale, they must be anchored so deeply that they sway and they will not topple. So that inspired us to identify ways that we could work with young people, as Emmett's mother did, to help them with their education, something that Emmett didn't have a chance to achieve, higher education. So we're looking ways to support young people, to support families and women, so that they can reach that next level in their lives, to empower them, to inspire them, to educate them, and to equip them with the tools that are necessary. We also, as we've been talking about it, we thought that Emmett's story is just an important piece of sharing that part of history so that it's not repeated. And so we've dedicated ourselves to sharing that story. One thing another quote that I want to mention to you, which is also something that's a driving force for the Emmett Till Legacy Foundation.
Please.
And this was actually recently stated by an author and a reviewer, if you will, on Slate.com. Her name is Jessica Rourke, and I told her I would be quoting her. But she said, if you really want to teach students how to think about history, the content must be deeply upsetting at times. A serious study of history requires a confrontation with the failures of courage and conscience, and that often is marked by our times. Acknowledging this history doesn't diminish the gains that we've made in society. It makes them all that the more extraordinary, which I think is so true. So
Yeah.
that's something that drives us too.
Yeah, it is an extraordinary piece of history. 1955, the two men that perpetrated this found not guilty.
Yes.
And one of the things that occurred to me in thinking about this conversation ahead of time is, you know, back then we did not have media like we have today. You know, there may have been 3 television networks. I'm not sure that there might have been 2,
Yeah.
1 or 2. But you know, I wonder how the fact that these guys did what they did and then walked. I wonder how the country would have been swayed differently if all the social media and proliferation of media that we know today had been in place, because it just kind of went under the radar.
Well, I think part of that, well, fortunately back then, and you know, it's been shown in the documentary, there was quite a bit of news coverage, which was unique at that time. Mamie, who's, you know, a young woman in 1955 who just lost her son, was oftentimes had a microphone stuck in her face by a news, you know, reporter, and others asking these ridiculous questions of her at that time. How do you feel, and why are you promoting your son's death, and you know, crazy things like that, capitalizing on his death, you know, being accused of some, you know, just crazy things at that time. But unfortunately, the media was starting to emerge, and Jet Magazine, who posted the picture, that went viral, as viral it could be, you know, back then. But when it was in London
what was
and
viral
Europe,
then?
well, you know, a fax or mimeograph or whatever, however,
Yeah.
Yeah. But it did actually, that picture went across the world into news media and other outlets across the world in 1955. So there was a feeling of what's going on in America, you know, across the world. You know, what's happening there? This is a 14-year-old. So the human side of individuals, even those in the South, they were disturbed by what happened. So when they were acquitted, of course, that was something that the state of Mississippi wanted to happen. The police wanted to happen.
Is that where the trial
The
was?
Bryants, it was in Mississippi.
Yeah.
Yes, it was in
All-white
Lafleur
jury.
County. All-white jury, because we weren't registered to vote, so you weren't able to, or African Americans weren't registered to vote, so they weren't able to sit, you know, in a jury of their peers, if you will. So there were some very significant things that happened during that trial. Mose Wright actually stood up, African American man, and pointed to the 2 white murderers. That was unheard of at that time. So I'd say that, you know, if taking a closer look at what happened back then, particularly with Emmett's story, if you consider that ground zero or the spark that
Right.
started this movement, you know, forward, very significant things that
It did
occurred.
resonate.
It did.
But think how
definitely
fast
did.
it would today. Think how fast
Exactly.
the Trayvon Martin
Exactly.
case resonated.
Exactly. And so you're right. You're absolutely right. But there are some similarities, you know, there
Sure.
that started it. So we are just happy and proud that we have this opportunity. This is how we, as a family, seek justice. We consider our opportunity to speak to folks like yourself, to Metropolitan Community College, communities and organizations. This is an honor for us because it's just us that have, you know, this opportunity to have these conversations, and we've been given the opportunity to have this discourse with many different audiences across the country,
That's
and
great.
hopefully across the world. But yeah, so you were asking about the foundation.
Yes.
And I also just want to say that we can't do this alone, and we have honorary ambassadors such as people like Tavis Smiley, Ambassador Andrew Young, Jesse Jackson, which a lot of people probably have heard that name, athletes and others who have joined us in previous times and even currently today in sharing the story or have helped to support our efforts. And so we're just, you know, happy that they've seen that this is something that young people need to understand. People like Ludacris and others, you know, have spoken out about this and have joined us in some of our events and have helped us, you know, move things forward. But that's not to say that we always have everything that we need, you know, so we just want to encourage.
Financial support?
Well, financial support is always important, you know, to help us continue on this journey. We, you know, give a scholarship away. We help young people experience a HBCU college tour every year. You know,
What's
we support
HBCU?
them. Historical Black College tour. Colleges like Clark Atlanta University, Morehouse College. There are many of us, you know, whether it's, you know, African Americans and not, that don't know that those colleges exist. And so communities like in Omaha and others have sponsored these tours, and we try to support them, you know, in doing that. We try to support several students that go. So certainly financial support helps us to continue, you know, with that, along with providing a platform for even other family members to get out and to meet different audiences, to tell their story. And other family members like Trayvon Martin's family and others who, you know, it's therapeutic to share their pain, but they also are looking at how do you move beyond that? How do you go from tragedy to hope? And so we try to, you know, to support and encourage them. We do also a women's empowerment symposium called Loving from the Inside Out, and it is a way to help women, I'd say, love themselves, you know, and have a chance to.
Don't forget us men now.
Well, we don't. But when a woman is well, the world is well.
Well, I get
and men are taken care of very well. But the other thing
I'm not going there.
like I said, we can agree to disagree. But one of the key things that we do during this symposium, we recognize several women of courage, those that have had the same kind of courage that Mamie Till Mobley had, Emmett's mother, who chose to have that open casket funeral. So we've recognized people like Sabrina Fulton with her grace and courage, who's been speaking out about her son's death. We've recognized doctors and others who've done some significant things and have shown, you know, the same kind of courage. And so we, you know, do that. We promote the Never Again movement and pledge. That gives us an opportunity to do that. And then we're just recently supporting Operation Hope, who they're starting something called From Civil Rights to Silver Rights. And it's about financial literacy, about helping young people understand money and understand how to manage it, how to keep it, and how to spend it, and how to
not spend it.
Let it work for you. Exactly. So I think that's probably one of the newest things that we've adopted.
Well,
so we collaborate.
That's
So
great. I mean, I'm glad I
organizations.
asked because
Yeah.
you're involved in a lot of good things there.
A lot going on.
You do, you do.
We do.
There's a Facebook page. Never Again. That Never Again.
Oh,
Facebook
yeah.
page.
And we need more followers there, because
Are you on yourself?
on
Facebook? That's a no,
limited.
isn't it?
I'm you know, I think Facebook is a wonderful way to promote. I just, for myself personally, I think we
I live
share,
on Facebook.
We share. Do you?
I do, and Twitter. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
I'm
That's
like,
wonderful.
I'm like addicted to it.
Oh my goodness. Well, through the Emmett Till Legacy, Never Again, and our Twitter as well.
I've
yes.
already liked it.
Have you?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Go check it out.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You brought a couple other things I want to make sure you have a chance to just real quickly refer to. This is a family.
Yes.
keepsake, yeah.
Yeah, this is a family keepsake that Mamie Till Mobley, which is Emmett's mother, and his grandmother, and I believe their pictures are on the inside here. Let me just
They're going to be too small for us to see.
Too small
but
to see?
I just thought we could, yeah.
Okay. This is Emmett's grandmother.
Yeah.
They put this book together, pictures of our family members, how we're related, stories that from their, I guess, memory and their relationship, that they give us a picture of who these people are,
Yeah.
you know. And then it was actually dedicated to my great-grandfather, Joe Smith, and his brother, and signed by Richard Nixon, with a greeting on the back here.
Wow.
So that was something that we took pride in. They sold this for $5 at our family reunions. And I'll tell you, at that time, this is years ago. This was produced when my great grandfather was alive. No one wanted to spend the money. They thought, I'm giving you $5 for this, but I'm so glad that my parents
That's great.
bought several of them. The other thing that I have here is this was a book of the individuals who are now engraved, and their names are engraved at the Civil Rights Memorial in Montgomery, Alabama. And this is where Mamie Till Mobley had the chance to speak. We helped her write her speech at the time, and they invited family members down. This is the Southern Poverty Law Center invited us down at the unveiling of that memorial. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I'm not.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It was actually created by Maya Lin, who did the I think she did the Vietnam Memorial as well. So it's a beautiful thing. And the inscription that's on the monument there says, "Until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream," which is a Martin Luther King quote. And it's something that the family received. So it's a keepsake of mine. Thank you.
You bet. The hour runs fast. I don't want to. I certainly don't want to leave the conversation without just asking you to share what you want to share. I mean, what is it I guess, what was it at the presentation that you really wanted to leave the audience with, and what would you like our community to know?
Well, good question. Good question. I appreciate you asking. Well, it's important that, and I think we've talked about this before, that we have these conversations, that we reflect back on history and we tie it to the present. We had a chance to ask our panel. We had a wonderful panel that participated, and we had a chance to ask them a question. And what that question was, and I'd like for the audience to maybe think about it too, and that is, how does Emmett Till's story relate to what's transpired with Trayvon Martin in 2012 and what's happening in Omaha today, as well as other parts of the country? And think about the similarities, because there's some. Think about the differences, because there's some. And most importantly, think about the opportunities that exist to affect change. And there are many of those. So that's...
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. So now the question is, what's your answer to those questions? Although you can't speak to Omaha necessarily anymore, but what's your answer to those questions?
Well, I think that, I think from the nuances that we talked about, there are some similarities, the nuanced racism, if you will, the fast forwarding to this post-racial, the need to fast forward to a post-racial society, which really doesn't exist, that our communities want to place us beyond racism, doesn't exist yet. We have a lot of work to do. And I think that when we have a chance, as our organization is prepared to do and preparing to do across the country, and that is to engage with audiences across the country, with young people, to incorporate them into these discussions, and to have a chance to build a platform. We're providing this platform so we can start talking about this. I don't have all the answers. If I had all the answers, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. But I think the answers are...
You'd be on a bigger network or something? Is that what you're saying?
I would.
You wouldn't have time for me.
But no. No, this is wonderful, a wonderful opportunity.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah, but
But you say you wouldn't be sitting here if you had the answers.
Well,
yeah.
Well, yeah, because, I wouldn't think that it would be valuable for us
wouldn't be
to
necessary.
talk together. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're providing that platform where we can have those kind of discussions and to develop these workable solutions to get there. We're not there yet, so we have a lot of work to do. And I think, like in Omaha, we have a wonderful opportunity here, have wonderful opportunities in Minneapolis, in southern cities and states across this country, and hopefully the world. And I think we're uniquely positioned because we have a vested interest. We do have a story to tell. We have this pain that we can show and evidence. It's evident that we are moving beyond it. And we just like to have our communities join in with us to move us forward.
Let's see, how many years ago? 60 almost, 50, since 1955?
55, it's 50,
14.
58.
58, 60 years.
Almost 60 years.
And
yes.
so we talk about change or lack thereof in 58 to 60 years. Let me just try this on you.
Okay.
Maybe, well, we've overused the word nuance, but
Yeah.
to use it again, maybe the nuance is that we have gone from, in 58 years, racially motivated to racially tolerated. I mean, you know, that these incidences and issues are not as blatant, maybe. Well, they certainly are in the case of murder, but I think no question it was racially motivated in 1955. Trayvon Martin maybe is exonerated, notwithstanding some of the legal technicalities, because of racial, because we tolerate the murder of a person of color.
And isn't that a sad thing?
Is it, I mean, what do you think?
Well, and this is why we have these conversations and we provide this platform. There's so many things I could say about that, because from your perspective and my perspective, it's probably going to be a little bit different, and which is okay. But I think that the racial motivated is still there, unfortunately. It may not result in lynching, that we see. But if you read the book, The New Jim Crow, which ties this together, I believe her name is Michelle Alexander, wrote it. And this mass incarceration, this pipeline to prison, the prison industrial industry, or prison industrial complex, I should say, is something for people to think about, because there are some nuances and some motivations, I think, that place individuals, young individuals, and put them on this journey, whether, instead of going towards education, which is what Metropolitan College is providing, what Emmett Till Legacy Foundation is trying to steer kids towards. They're steering them on this pathway to prison. And the majority of those individuals are young men of color. So I don't think the country, who relies on our young people to be our future and to take care of us, if you will, I don't think that's going to equal the kind of outcomes we want. And so why not, let's recognize things as they're happening, and let's label them. If that makes us more comfortable, label them. But I think one of the labels needs to not go away, and that is racism. I think it still exists, and I think we need to talk about that elephant that's in the room that we want to tend to push to the side.
And I think it's always important to remember that if there is racism, that doesn't mean everybody's guilty. You know what I mean?
Right.
Sure, there's racism, but
Yes.
not everybody is as I think we tend to want to do that, to say that, well, everybody's racist. I don't think that that's true. Do you?
I think we have preferences. I think we have, there's stereotypes. There's certain experiences that we've had where we may feel a certain way about a certain culture. I think racism is about power, so I think if you have the ability to control a person's life, their finances, their livelihood, I think that is that label and that ability is what racism means to me.
Yeah.
If you use race as a way to put barriers in place.
You
so
know what? It's just too bad we don't have 2 hours, because we are out of time. This has been delightful.
Oh, this
Appreciate
has
it,
been
Deborah.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
And
much.
again, you can go online and learn more about the Emmett Till Legacy Foundation. Deborah
Yes.
Watts, thank you, and thank you for being with us on Metro on More. We're clean out of time. Our goal is to acquaint you and familiarize you with the leadership and the mission of Metropolitan Community College.